This is Counterpunch Boxing News, and I'm going to talk about some more boxing concerning Muhammad Ali. Um, you know, I just want to elaborate more on the great accomplishments of this great man that we've lost. It seems like we're losing more and more people. You know, that influenced our life, but everyone must live and everyone must die. That's understandable, but people really don't get how talented this man was and the things that he did inside the ring and outside the ring. We can start inside the ring, the things that he did accomplish. He's been fighting since he was like 12 or 14. Won the gold medal just to come back to his hometown and to find out that he couldn't get served into a place, you know, that he grew up because of the color of his skin, and a lot of that was going on at the particular time. However, you know, he realized that him winning the gold medal didn't mean anything if he couldn't be free, you know. Um, and his reaction to that, he threw away the gold medal. He threw it in the river, and that showed that at that early stage of his life, you know, um, that the measures he went to, he threw away his gold medal just to express that if I'm not free, what good is this medal? You know what I'm saying? The medal didn't mean anything if he couldn't go into a restaurant and eat like an American citizen, but he represented America. You know what I'm saying? Like that. That's just, it was so backwards. So remember that, okay? You know, he fought his way up into a title shot, and the Boogie Bear and the boogeyman at the time was Sonny Liston. And Sonny Liston was a beast. You know what I mean? He was the kind of guy that he was a bully. You know, he was powerful. He was strong. He had power in both hands. He was the modern day. He was the modern day Tyson. You know what I'm saying? He was that representation of that time. And everyone thought that Ali was going to get destroyed. It was this loudmouth kid from Louisville, Kentucky, and little did they know he was undefeated too. But of course, they looked at brute power versus strength because of how Sonny Liston did Floyd Patterson, Pretty Boy Floyd back in the day, and he destroyed Pretty Boy Floyd. So of course, this loudmouth boy from Louisville, Kentucky, a pretty boy, had no chance of getting in there and taking on Sonny Liston. You know what I mean? Sonny Charles Liston was one of those guys. He was the muscle for the mob. He's the guy that you didn't want to see if you didn't pay the mob. You know what I mean? That's the kind of guy he was, turned boxer. And he had a lot of ties with the mob. He was just literally he was the realest boogeyman and representation of the thug at the time. He was a hoodlum. You know what I mean? And he meant business, and he went in there to knock you out. He was from the streets. He didn't play with any of his opponents. So when Ali went in there and dismantled that guy, dispatched him, outboxed him for 6 rounds, making him quit in the 6 rounds was absolutely a phenomenon and a surprise to everyone. And Ali told him, he said it before. He talked mad shit before that fight, during the fight, and after the fight. He never stopped talking. He kept telling them, "Hey, you guys doubt me, but mark my words, I'm gonna put the Sonny Liston down." He said it the best. Because I'm a little choked up right now. My voice is kind of gone, whatever. But he was able to take the title from Sonny Liston. You know, well, the second fight, you know, it was, you know, a lot of controversy behind the second fight. But regardless of what happened in the second fight, which was supposed to be a phantom punch, a flash knockdown, or a knockout, you know, see the first fight. You know what I'm saying? What happened in the first fight? Ali picked him apart. That's what he did. He threw punches and bunches. He boxed him until he couldn't box him anymore. You know what I mean? And Sonny Liston didn't want any more of it. And he quit on the stool. He couldn't take any more of those punches from this quick, fast, young, sharp, smart fighter from Muhammad Ali. You know, sorry, Cassius Clay at the time. He hasn't changed his name because he hasn't joined the Nation of Islam yet. However, shortly after him joining, winning the title, he did join the Nation of Islam, and he was converted into, you know, Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. turned into Muhammad Ali. You know, first of his name because he had a son, Muhammad Ali Jr. However, you know, unstoppable, unbeaten, you know. Everyone still criticized him, really didn't give him credit, you know. And then, of course, the Vietnam War was going on at the time, and there was a lot of guys that were getting drafted because the draft was in, you know, and a lot of people went overseas against their will. They went because the government told them to go. You know, fighters like his predecessor, you know, Joe Louis, the Brown Bomber. You know, but Joe Louis, you know, he went back in the 40s. He went when it was different times. And eventually what the government did, they screwed him, you know. So Muhammad Ali wasn't going for any of that. This was a different war, a different time, and a different person, obviously. Because Muhammad Ali stated, I will not go 10,000 miles to kill or, you know, destroy innocent brown people of color, you know, while I don't even have freedom at my house. They're not my enemy. You're my enemy. And he was referring to the government of the United States of America, you know. And it's ironic that he just turned 74. He was blessed to turn 74 years of age. You know, it was almost, you know, he was 6 years from 4 scores. But if you really think about it, man, it's ironic because Memorial Day was Monday, which was his birthday, you know, and Memorial Day represents the soldiers that fought in the war or that fought for our country that are not with us, you know. And it's ironic that he was a soldier of another war, you know. He was a soldier of anti-war, things that really didn't make sense in this world, you know what I mean? And I just thought that was really ironic that his birthday laid on this particular day, and his last birthday, in fact, you know. And that's what kind of, you know, that light bulb kind of went off of my head because, you know, he was that prisoner of war. He was that guy that didn't want to fight, didn't want to go over there and kill innocent people while he didn't even have freedom over here. You know, that wasn't equality over in the States at the time, you know, and a lot of people were being treated unfairly, killed, lynched, hung, shot, beaten, you know what I mean? But yet couldn't find a job, but yet they wanted you to go all the way over there and fight in a war that you had nothing to do with. Absolutely nothing to do with. And then they made you do it when you came back. If you weren't hooked on drugs, weren't missing body parts, brain wasn't, you know, suffering from post traumatic stress syndrome or any of that crazy heinous shit, you know, you could come back over here and couldn't find a job. You know what I mean? Like, in Muhammad Ali, yes, they took damn near 4 years from him. He couldn't fight. They stripped his belt. You know, Frazier ended up with the belt. He fought Frazier. Ultimately, he lost to Frazier in the first fight. However, he came back, you know, and fought. Not only did he beat Frazier, Frazier was beat by the next boogeyman, the next Mike Tyson of his time, which was George Foreman. George Foreman was a beast, you know. He was a monster in that ring. He could hit you to the side of your stomach. He could hit you in the solar plexus and make you shit on yourself. He was that guy that no one wanted to deal with. You know, another Olympian, another boogeyman, another hard-hitting knockout artist. No one wanted to deal with that man, including Frazier, because he couldn't. He was knocked down 7 times until it was time to say good night, goodbye to Joe Frazier, because he couldn't do anything with George Foreman. And this is the young George Foreman. I'm not talking about the old, bald-headed, lean, mean, fat, reducing machine Foreman. I'm talking about the hard-hitting, don't give a shit, I'm not raising my hand at the Olympics, you know, pissed off Foreman. You know, that guy. You know what I mean? The dude just knocked people out. He hit you and you went the way his punch went, because that's the way he knocked you. You know, if he's swinging to his left, you going to his left. So 7-1 underdog in that fight. He loses to Frazier. Okay. Frazier loses to Foreman. Badly. What happens in Zaire, Africa? Ali, 7-1 underdog again. Everyone doubted him again. Comes back and picks Foreman apart. Knocks him out in the 8th round. Good night, Foreman. KO. You know, that shows the greatness. You know, and if you compare him to other fighters, like a lot of people say, oh, well, Larry Holmes was just as good. Okay, ask yourself this question. Did Larry Holmes beat Mike Tyson? No, he was knocked out by Mike Tyson. You know what I'm saying? You know, you got to ask yourself those type questions. You know, did Mike Tyson beat Evander Holyfield? You know what I mean? Those type fights like that, Muhammad Ali was able to overcome, and only God knows what Muhammad Ali would have done if they wouldn't have took damn near 4 years from him out of his career. You know what I'm saying? Because those were the best years of his life, and he did everything from the Did Lie Joe to Damned If I Know to make money for his family, because he was broke. You know what I mean? Because they wouldn't let him fight. You know, he was on Broadway. You know, he did other various plays. You know what I mean? He did a lot of things. You know, he's on talk shows and things of that nature. You know, so when it finally got to the Supreme Court, yeah, they let him fight again, but they've taken damn near 4 years from him. But guess what? Being a great fighter, that made no never mind. Did he complain? No, he didn't complain. He just went in there because he got the chance to do what he loves to do, to know what he's skilled to do, to know what he was best at, and got in the ring and made it happen. You know, and he beat the best at the time. Norton, Foreman, Frazier 2 times. You know, Liston, Patterson. You know, he would have whooped Rocky Marciano's ass if he wouldn't have retired. That's why Rocky Marciano was humble enough to know, no, I'm not getting my ass in the ring at this age, because I know if Joe Louis couldn't do it, I know I couldn't do it. Smart move, because he would have been destroyed by possibly every heavyweight at that time, including Ali. You know, so Ali was the greatest. You know, he did things inside and outside the ring. He had a beautiful family. You know, he was just so charismatic. And honestly, I think Ali was the first rapper. You know what I mean? Like the things that Ali said, you know, hey, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, you know. Hey, you can't hit what you can't see. You know, those things like that. You know, I mean, he had various other rhymes that he just came off and ad-libbed. You know what I mean? Yeah, he was actually the first rapper of its time. People didn't understand it. He was, you know, he said words that rhymed. What is that? That's rap. That's hip hop. You know, Ali had the first hip hop, just something off the fly, just something I just thought about, but it's true. He was the first rapper. You know, he was the first, he was one of the first activists. You know, where Joe Louis had to go to war, Ali picked up and was like, hell no, I'm not going to go to war. You know, because I know and I have enough sense to know that's not what we supposed to be doing. You know, and then at the time, you know, they thought he was crazy. Again, they doubted him. You know, of course, the commentators, they ridiculed him. You know, Howard Cosell, they went toe to toe. You know, it was an intellectual versus an intellectual. You know, and Ali wasn't backing down. He believed in his beliefs and he stuck to them. That's a real 100% person right there. and you can't take anything away from him whatsoever. You know what I mean? To fight a disease that long, ask Freddie Roach, ask Michael J. Fox. You know, these diseases are a real deal, you know, and eventually they will take you out. But a person that lived a life like he lived, he's done everything, you know, he's an icon to so many different people, you know, and now he officially becomes immortal, you know. He will always live. We will always see his videos. I was just looking at Google and the pictures and the magazines and the video footage, you know, that covered Ali. You can spend hours and hours and hours and hours looking at footage from Ali. He was well footage. He was well um, documented. You know what I'm saying? So it's a blessing to really come up in a time frame of Muhammad Ali or around the same time. So yes, this is a very sad day, but at the same time, it's a very special day because it won't be any other day like today. Any other day like today. So, you know, um, the homegoing of a great champion of this time, we will never forget. You know, and I'm a young guy as well as a lot of other people, but young people and old people alike should never forget this day because this is a day that God brought another great person home. And yes, it's sad because we hate to see people go, but Ali was his best when he was younger. You know, he's done all types of influential things in the sport of boxing for the world, you know, but I don't know if he was suffering, but I know, you know, he fought to the end. And that's really what's important, you know, and it was time for him to go. He wasn't in the best shape. So, you know, it was all, you know, you got to look at it if he was in pain or if he had to take medication, which he did. You know, it's a blessing that God finally brought him and called him home, you know. So that's something that we all have to remember, you know, when we think about Muhammad Ali. You know, yes, he's a fighter, but, you know, the best thing about a fighter is to know when to retire. If anybody's seen my other videos, I've been saying this, but I mean, meaning Ali, he's retiring in another sense. You know what I mean? His job is well done. His career, you know, is finished. And his fight didn't stop when he stopped fighting in the ring. You know, it stopped when he's accomplished everything that he had to accomplish, and which he done, you know. And just wrapping it up, you know, some thoughts about Muhammad Ali the Great. You know, this whole week or month, I'm going to dedicate, you know, a lot of my material to Muhammad Ali. So stay tuned for videos and clips like some things I've already started. So expect to see more of it. So this is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and you've been counterpunched once again. Peace.